So today we've got some concepts for our upper body. Specifically, we're going to be working on our arms and our hands. These are just some classic ideas that are pretty common, and I think that they allot for a lot of exploration and a lot of experimentation just when it comes to your style and your approach. I'm hoping today that these exercises will kind of give you guys a bit of a base that you can utilize to create your own variations and sort of just find what works for you and what you like. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So I think one of the main ideas that I want you guys to glean from this video is to become more conscious about the relationship between your upper body and your lower body. As opposed to thinking about our upper and our lower half as like two separate hemispheres and thinking, okay, we're just working on our upper body and ways that we can move our upper body only. I want us to think about the cohesion between our upper and our lower body. These concepts are more so designed to create cohesion so that no matter what we're doing with our feet or with our arms, everything looks cohesive and looks like it belongs together, if that makes sense. I just said cohesive a lot, but really I guess that's kind of our word for this video. We want to think about the cohesive relationship between our upper and our lower body. Even though we're specifically talking about upper body concepts today, we're going to think about how we can utilize these concepts to create more cohesive pictures or positions, or if you even want to say style, within our dance. Whether we're freestyling or making choreography. So enough of the jibber jabber. So these are all concepts that I have utilized personally and that have actually helped me out a lot in my dance journey. The first two ideas that we're going to talk about are a little bit more general and allow for a lot of personal exploration. And then we have 5 more specific ideas that we're going to break down as well. So let's just hop into it. The first concept that we're kind of going to talk about today, and I don't even know if you can call this a concept, but we're going to think about pulling inspiration from other aspects or other elements of hip hop culture to kind of develop more style within our upper body and just how we approach movement. Let me explain what I mean. So specifically for me, when it comes to my upper body, I find that I pull a lot of inspiration from hip hop artists, specifically hip hop artists in music videos or during live performances, and just in the ways that they communicate with the crowd. A lot of times they're very verbal with their hands and they utilize them to kind of emphasize different points. Simply put, they talk with their hands a lot. So I find that I pull a lot of inspiration from the different ways that they will talk with their hands and how they will communicate to the crowd. You know, even if they're trying to get the crowd hyped up, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of stylization that is a little bit more unique to hip hop culture and that I think kind of gives my dance or my upper body just a very authentic feel to it. It just makes my dance feel more hip hop to me, if that makes sense. So to kind of break that down and to give you guys something more specific to play with, I would say that the MC Rock really utilizes this idea. I mean, this step is based off of MCs interacting with the crowd. If you've ever seen 8 Mile or that clip from 8 Mile where he's rocking with the crowd, that's a great example of the MC Rock being utilized within a performance setting by an MC to communicate with the crowd. Even if it's just more of a hype moment and we're all just bobbing our hands like this, I still think that there are concepts or ideas that we can pull from that to kind of formulate a style and an approach for our upper body as we're dancing. Now, some of you may not be as familiar with this type of idea. Maybe you just don't listen to a lot of hip hop music or you haven't seen this type of thing. I would recommend doing some research into older hip hop music videos and live performances. Maybe just pick some artists that have songs that you really like. I would say to kind of get more so an idea of what I'm talking about today, looking at artists from, say, the 90s back, late 70s, 80s, and 90s is definitely more going to give you an idea of what I'm talking about today. Not to say that there are not artists today that kind of utilize some of these ideas. It was definitely more of a thing in, say, 90s hip-hop music videos. There would probably be a fisheye lens, and they'd really just be getting all close up and personal with the camera. It's kind of a staple look of videos from that time period. And so I would definitely recommend doing some research and watching some older videos. If you'd like some recommendations, be sure to comment down below. I can try to link some of those. But in general, artists from that time just kind of held a different posture, and the relationship to the music that was coming out at that time was different. Looking at older stuff, specifically music videos and even live performances, I think will really kind of give you guys a better idea of what I'm talking about. I'll also try to give you guys some examples. If we were to just kind of pull inspiration from this MC Rock step, the idea here is that the MC is engaging with the crowd, so they're up on the stage and the audience is down below them or up in the balcony around them if they're performing somewhere like that. And it's all about engaging with the people around you. And you don't just have to imagine that you're communicating with a person. It can just be a gesture or a position that you're holding with your arm to kind of stylize yourself. Really, it's about whatever puts you in that space. If it helps you to imagine that you're performing to a crowd, that's great, do that. If not, then really just think about your hands as communicating something, as opposed to saying something with your mouth and using words. Thinking about your hands doing the talking for you and utilizing them to be a little bit more specific about how you're communicating. So let's say you're playing around with some footwork concepts, just kind of rocking, finding a general rhythm. You can start to incorporate some of these ideas, and already right here, you've got a lot of space to explore. So just experiment. Try to do some research and pull some inspiration from different artists or different videos. Even pulling inspiration from things like album covers and graffiti art. I think sometimes we overlook the value in finding inspiration from just other parts of hip-hop culture. Even though there's a lot of individuality within the culture, there's a lot of continual themes that have woven in and through the decades as hip-hop has changed and evolved. There's certain ideas that kind of have just stuck around and that are what make hip-hop hip-hop. So any different parts of the culture that you can utilize and pull inspiration from, I think are good. And I think it will also make your style more authentic to not just hip-hop dance, but to hip-hop culture as a whole. So that's the first idea. Lots of room for exploration and to kind of add your own style or your approach to it. Do some research, dive into different videos and different performances of artists that you may like, and let me know if you'd like any recommendations. The second of the more general ideas that we're going to talk about is kind of similar to the first, and the idea is to kind of pull inspiration from different roots of hip-hop culture, or specifically in this case, hip-hop dance. So without getting too deep into history, when hip-hop first started to become a thing and a culture started to form around it and all these different things like the new music style was coming out and new dances, the first real style that we see emerging from that space is breaking. And for those who saw the Olympics, breaking has obviously come quite a long way. And most people would view breaking as the foundational dance style for all of hip-hop dance. And people have different ways of talking about it, and I'm sure that someone might disagree with that statement, but really all I'm trying to say is breaking was one of the first dance styles within hip-hop culture, and there's been a lot of inspiration pulled from that style to create other styles. And I think it's very easy to see a consistent theme of pulling inspiration from breaking within hip-hop dance. Even if we're just talking about top rock, the influence of this type of footwork is you'd have to kind of be blind to not see that within hip-hop dance or hip-hop as a style. And I think if you were to ask a lot of people who really know what they're talking about and who were really there at that time period, they will tell you breaking is hip-hop at its most foundational essence. There's nothing more hip-hop than breaking. It is considered one of the foundational pillars of hip-hop culture. You've got DJs/producers, you've got MCs, you've got artists/graffiti artists, and you've got dancers. And the dance that emerged at the same time that all of those things were emerging was breaking. As hip-hop music was formulating and becoming a thing, breaking was formulating at the same time. The point of everything that I'm trying to say is that breaking is a very authentic iteration of hip-hop, and I think that there's a lot of ideas that we can pull inspiration from to kind of formulate style within our upper body. So if you know anything about breaking at all, you'll kind of know that B-boys and B-girls, they structure their rounds into kind of different elements. They'll start with top rock, which is basically just all the stuff that you see that is not done on the floor. It's all of these types of ideas, like your kickball change, you've got crossovers, you've got top rocks, you've got all these variations of those steps. Top rock is an art in and of itself, and I think that there is a lot of inspiration that we can pull from the different postures and the positions that B-boys and B-girls find when they're playing around with that idea. And I think it goes hand in hand with what I was talking about at the beginning of this video. When you watch good top rock, there is a cohesiveness between the upper and the lower body. And I think the most basic example looks like this. You can see it in a kick step rock. My arms are not just staying down here by my side. I'm using them to kind of add more style to how I move. There's a lot of different postures that B-boys have adopted over the years, specifically finding different positions with the hands, whether that's hand to forehead or cross, kind of bringing your hands back. So playing around with different postures and poses, for lack of a better word, I think is helpful. Just kind of familiarizing yourself with that type of approach. There's a lot of freedom of exploration and expression within this type of idea. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. So sort of just starting by becoming more familiar with some of these classic positions, I think will help give you at least a general direction that you can go in as you're formulating a style for your upper body. So if I could recommend some more research for you guys, I would say I think it's very valuable to spend some time watching and just researching b-boys, watching different battles or freestyle rounds, just kind of familiarizing yourself with that type of movement, specifically paying attention to top rock and how the relationship between the upper and the lower body remains cohesive throughout the round. Some more specific ideas that you guys can play around with, I kind of already did them. Bringing your hand to your head and finding an opposite cross is a very classic position within breaking. Finding crosses or opening your arms. Also kind of just different hand placements that you can find. Different points of contact with your hands. And I think even just playing around with variations of this idea. So if you were to do a kick step rock, in general, the pattern of the feet and the arms kind of is the same. When we kick forward, our arms go forward. When we come out to the side, our arms go to the side. Some variation of that. If you start with this as a base, and you can start to play around with lots of different pathways, playing around with different positioning and different placement, and really just trying to pull inspiration from the approach of breakers. I think that opens up a whole new world. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I talk about these sort of patterns so much, specifically this one. If you've been on the channel, you know that I talk about this a lot. But I think it's partially because for me, once I sort of discovered this type of movement vocabulary and I started to understand the relationship between breaking and hip hop dance, it opened up an entire new universe for me. Like just learning the different variations of this step and how I can utilize my arms to build cohesion between my upper and lower body, like that has so much influence on my approach with hip hop and just dance in general, even today. And so I recommend the same for you guys. So with these first two more general ideas that we just talked about, really the idea is to pull inspiration from other parts of the culture of hip hop that we can utilize to influence how we dance and that we can integrate into our style to just kind of create a more authentic approach, something that's very hip-hop authentic. There's a lot of freedom and a lot of personal exploration that can be done within this. And if you guys would like more specific tips, be sure to leave them down below. These are more so just ideas to kind of get you started and to kind of give you a path that you can explore yourself. So anyways, there's the first two more general ideas. Now let's kind of break down some more specific ideas that you can utilize. I think I might come down here for a little bit. So the first of the more specific ideas that we're going to talk about is this idea of gestures. And I think that this idea will specifically help us as we explore the first two ideas that we talked about. So if you don't know what I mean by gestures, a couple examples of gestures that are just kind of commonly used in everyday life are things like when we tell someone to be quiet, but we don't say it, we just hold our finger up to our mouth like this. That communicates something without using any words. Or even a thumbs up is a gesture. You're saying good job or that's good to someone without actually saying it with your mouth. So that's all that gestures are. And specifically today, we're going to talk about communicating with the hands. I think you can do gestures with other parts of your body too, but really we're just going to be talking about the hands and the arms today. So if we can think about gestures as sort of communication with our hands, then we can start to formulate different ways that we personally talk or utilize gestures as we're dancing. I commonly utilize kind of this point idea. It's sort of like a 7 or an L. I just kind of like the positioning of it and how it feels, and I think it gives you a lot of freedom to play around with. I also kind of like this position because even if you're not holding it directly sideways with your palm facing in towards you, you can kind of hold it more out like this, and it sort of works as more of a relaxed hand position. Sometimes when you're dancing, you don't need something super specific. You kind of just need a position that your hands can hold so that you have more freedom to play around with other ideas. And so just kind of finding this stylization with the hands, for me, I really like, and I found has been super helpful. It also can help if I'm trying to communicate with someone specifically, or even if I'm trying to show off something. You can kind of utilize it as more of a point to direct people's attention. You can use it to gesture to yourself, to other people. There's just lots of freedom and lots of room to explore with that idea, and I found it to be super helpful for me personally. And there's lots of different gestures that you can play around with. There's so many different ways that you can talk with your hands, and I think a lot of it comes back to what are you trying to say. And so I guess one of the main ideas behind this concept really is how can you utilize your hands to say what you want to say while you're dancing? How can you utilize your hands to direct attention or to communicate something specific, if that makes sense? So that's the first of the more specific concepts. The second of the more specific concepts we're going to talk about is points. Points, pointing, directing attention, all that kind of stuff. So for me, the way that I utilize points most commonly is I utilize them as a method to direct the attention of whoever's watching me. Now you can utilize points to kind of direct attention to different things that you're doing when you're moving. You can use points to kind of explore different directions as you're freestyling. You could point directly at somebody to communicate something specific. Like I said before, points are really effective because they really just have the capacity to change the attention of anybody who might be watching. So let's say I'm playing around with a movement idea. I can utilize points to sort of highlight the idea that I'm playing around with. You can utilize points to show where you're gonna go. You can utilize points to show where you came from. Like I said, you can utilize points to communicate specifically with somebody, or you can utilize points to sort of change the direction that you're traveling in. Like I've said before, there's just lots of room for exploration. I think specifically the idea behind points is to direct attention. And so figuring out how you can best utilize that concept within your style is really the goal here. So that's number 2. The third concept we're gonna talk about for your hands is blades. Blades. Pretending that your hand is like the blade of a knife. It's just a nice clean position that you can bring your hands to. To me, it communicates more that you're sort of slicing through something as opposed to, say, hands like this, which are just a little bit more general. Now, you could utilize blades in your freestyle as sort of a concept. Maybe you're utilizing them to kind of carve through the space around you. You can incorporate it into different ideas. Like I said at the beginning, I mainly think about blades as slicing through something. Kind of a fun concept and really just kind of an old reliable that you can always fall back on. It's a very classic position, blade hands. The fourth concept that we're going to talk about is utilizing fists. To me, fists communicate that you're holding on to something or that you're grabbing onto something, catching something. Ideas like grab and throw utilize fists a lot. Pulling stuff apart. You can pull yourself towards things. Sometimes I'll use a fist when I'm playing around with manipulating my arm in different ways. I incorporate it into my top rock a lot. A fist could look really good as an initiator. It has a very direct feel to it, if that makes sense. A little bit more intense, a little bit more specific. I've been playing around a lot with this pull idea recently, just kind of utilizing my hands to pull myself in different directions. But that's another one of those positions that you can kind of just fall back on and use in a ton of different ways. I've said this before, but that's an idea also that I want to make sure that everyone knows is all of these ideas are not necessarily hip-hop dance specific. You can definitely utilize these ideas within different dance styles or just in general for different things. We're more so thinking about how we can utilize these ideas within our practice of hip-hop dance. How can we incorporate these ideas into our style, specifically into our style of our upper body. And then the fifth and the final concept that we're going to talk about today is pushing/throwing. So this one's a little bit more general, but what I mean when I'm talking about this is sort of just this idea of utilizing your hands to kind of push or throw at the air in front of you. Now you can push forward, kind of think about smacking, almost like you're trying to clear dust out of the air or something. I don't know. But this is another one of those that's just a little bit more general. I think it goes well with kind of these ideas that we were talking about. Kind of a more general idea that allows for a lot of freedom of exploration. It's just a nice tool to kind of have in your back pocket. Now you can push or throw all the way through, or you can kind of find more of a stop. You can also push with a little bit more of a different positioning. You can incorporate different concepts within this idea. Pretend like you're swatting a fly. They don't have to be big throws or pushes too. You can play around with the energy behind it. You can use it a little bit smaller. It doesn't have to be big all the time. I've said this a lot throughout this video, but really my hope for these concepts is that you guys are able to take them and play with them on your own, to explore some of these ideas, sort of use them as a base and figure out what works for you, because you don't have to utilize all these concepts. These are just ideas that I've had personally that can maybe now inspire ideas for you guys that you can now incorporate into your style and how you dance. I've had a very specific journey myself with my arms when it comes to dance. I've always struggled with feeling that my arms are out of place or that they're too long and too skinny to look good with the movement that I like to do. And so these are just some ideas that have really actually helped me throughout the years to kind of hone my own style and also helped me to understand my arms and how I can best utilize them to showcase what it is that I want when I'm dancing. It's all about finding your personal style, what you connect with most, and what you think really helps you to express most clearly. And so with that, I would just say, take what you will from this video, whether it's just one concept or even just one idea or one thought that you kind of got struck by, and that you're now going to utilize to explore on your own. Whatever the case may be, take this video for what it's worth, utilize it how you wish, and don't think of this as like a direct tutorial, like a step-by-step, do this with your arms. I want you guys to have a lot of freedom to explore these ideas on your own and to incorporate them as you think best suits your style. Challenge yourself. Try new things that you may not be comfortable with. If some of these ideas are foreign to you, I would say it's very good to explore with them. Don't just brush them off and say, I don't want to incorporate that into my style. Try new things and explore new pathways, and just keep yourself open and allow yourself to feel uncomfortable. When you're trying something that you've never tried before, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but that's a sign that you're at least on the right path. We'll definitely have more specific instructional videos coming out in the future. These are obviously, like I keep saying, more general ideas. And if you guys would like more specific ideas broken down, then be sure to comment that down below, and I'll definitely be sure to take those into consideration. So just want to thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.